Welcome to the Women Talk podcast, where ordinary women share their extraordinary stories. We would love for you to share your story on our podcast. Go to www.womentalk.ca and apply to share your story. And now let's welcome your host, founder, and CEO of Women Talk, Bridget Lessard-DL.
Thank you for joining me today because I have an amazing guest, Brenda Hammon. Brenda is an amazing woman on a mission to break the silence. Brenda has written many books and is a best-selling author. Brenda started her journey of writing books with the book I Can't Hear the Birds Anymore, and then became an international bestseller and award winner with her book I Am. She also was in the Women Talk anthology, When Women Talk. And just recently, her last book, an anthology of women breaking the silence, is called Sacred Hearts Rising. She is passionate and she is ready to take on the world and let women talk. Let's hear Brenda's story.
Hi, Bridget. Thanks for having me on the podcast. A little bit about my story and why I wrote the book Sacred Hearts Rising. I had wanted to write the story about my granddaughter who had passed away when she was 7. And I thought, if I want to remember her forever and have her remembered forever, then I wonder if there's other people who want to do that too. But when I put the call out, nobody jumped on board. But other women came up and said that they had stories. So Sacred Hearts was born from all of these other women that had wanted to share their stories of overcoming tragic and grief and trauma and all of those things that nobody really wants to talk about. They happen to us all. We cannot walk through this life without having something happen to us. So that was the premise of Sacred Hearts Rising, was to bring all of those stories out into the open. So we have 25 brave women who, Bridget is one of them, who came out and said, yeah, I want to share my story and I want to make a difference in the world. And that's what it was all about. So the book is getting ready to be launched on March the 7th. Yay! And we have, the reviews are all in, and we've gotten 5 stars out of 5 on every review that the book has been dealt with. So that is absolutely amazing. So yeah, it is going to be a very, very fun day. The book is a very inspirational, heartfelt book told from the heart. And it's inspiring. And the women all tell you how they dealt with what had happened to them and how they moved forward in their life to have a better life that they never thought they would ever have.
Are you looking for less bounce for your buck? Go to www.sportsbras.ca, where you'll find the support you deserve.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Brenda. That's an amazing book, an amazing name, an amazing concept. I absolutely love it. How did you come up with the name? I really like the name.
Sacred Hearts was actually born out of heartfelt stories. So we thought, we want the stories to be from the heart. We want them to be shared. And most of those stories that are held in our heart are sacred. We guard them because we're afraid of repercussions if we talk about them. We are afraid of the shame and the guilt and all of that sort of stuff. So the idea was to take that sacred piece out of your heart and move it forward. And that's where we also got the rising, is because now you're rising up above. And so it just kind of fell together. Sacred Hearts Rising just became the embodiment of the book. All of the stories that are pulled out of your soul and set free.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Yesterday I was listening to an interview on the radio, and the guy was talking, he's kind of religious, but yet in a new way. And he was talking about when he goes in a room and somebody is spiritual, he's always, okay, so what happened to you? Because usually when something, very hard or different, that's when people grow and look for something more. What do you think of that?
Oh, I believe that is true. You have to grow spiritually. And I firmly believe that when women share their stories, and it's not so much as you got to jump out on the rooftop and scream that this has happened to you, but if you open up your heart and you start taking them out, it is a spiritual and a moving thing because it changes who you are fundamentally. You know, we all talk about, everybody said, oh, Uncle Joe, tell us that story about so-and-so. And, oh, Aunt Mildred, tell us that story about so-and-so. But nobody ever says, oh, gee, Aunt Mildred, tell us that story about what happened. Like, you know, those stories are not talked about. So those stories are a heavier story. They have a denser energy to them. And that dense energy stays within you. And the only way to get rid of it is to lift it up and bring it out so that it becomes one of those lighter stories with no charges and no energy attached to it.
How do you feel about children and those stories? Are they stories that we should share with our children or not?
I think children need to be aware that things do happen, and it's not necessarily the stranger that things happen to them. I don't think they need to know the gory details and things like that, but I think they need to know from your personal experiences. If you've had, for me, I've had sexual abuse as a child, and, you know, my grandchildren know in a form that things had happened. They don't know great details because I don't think it's important that they know the details, but they do know that things have happened, and to be aware. If you go out on your first date, you know, things just happen, and it's nobody's fault that it happened. So I think children need to be aware that, yeah, bad things happen to good people all the time.
And I think it's one of the best form of protection.
It is.
You know, because if they know of a story, they will maybe hopefully recognize it if it happens to them, that, you know, I've heard something like that. And yeah.
And what it does is it also teaches them that they can get over it, that they can move past it. So if something unfortunately does happen to your child, you have to be strong enough to be able to talk to them, because they're not going to want to tell you anything. They're not going to want to share. But if you've had something happen to you, you can now help them. And it empowers your children, and they don't have to carry this baggage for 40 and 50 years like a lot of women do.
I know, you know, the days that everything was swept under the carpet, everybody knew in the family, but, you know, we just did not do anything about it or talk about it. I think those days are over. I'm just feeling.
I'm hoping those days are over, because the silence part, even though the family knows about it, nobody talks about it, the children don't know about it. And then the children are put into the position to have it repeated.
Yeah. So,
yeah, knowledge is powerful, and not all knowledge is necessary, but the bare bones of, yeah, this stuff can happen. And no, you're not going to Uncle Fred's place because, you know, Uncle Fred does, you know, things that aren't very nice. And yeah.
Now, how many women in your anthology?
We have 25 women in the anthology, and the stories range from obviously sexual abuse, grief, loss, suicide, abandonment, addictions, cancer, near-death experiences. The list is endless as to the topics that are being discussed, and it's all of those topics that nobody talks about.
Yeah, and you know, probably what would be amazing is you could have a book of all the same story.
Oh, yeah.
It could all be about sexual abuse, but everybody's story is so different. Like the topic could be the same, but...
everybody's story is unique to them. And there isn't one story that's bigger than the other.
No.
It's a big story for that person, no matter what it is. And there is always somebody out there that will read the story and they say, oh, I can relate to that person. Oh, I can relate to that person. Oh, you know, and the stories are all about telling you what happened, but also telling you where you've gone and how you've gotten out. So it's almost like a template for somebody sitting and reading the book and say, well, if she did it, then I can do it. It gives hope. It gives hope that you can move past it.
Yeah, and I think it also helps people get a different perspective. Because sometimes, you're in the middle of your story and listening to someone else that has a similar story, but here's how they dealt with it or what they did with it can help people.
Oh, so true. So true. I'm hoping that sharing my story about my granddaughter that had passed when she was 7 days old will change other people's perspective of how they view children that have passed that early, because, it was devastating. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but I didn't get to spend my whole life with Jaden, but Jaden got to spend her whole life with me.
Very interesting.
And in 7 days, she made an impact on my life that is still going forward. And she's the reason why the book is being published.
Oh, that's fabulous. Now, was this your first anthology that you've put together?
Yes, this was the very first. I had written 3 books prior to that on my own personal journey, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to be a bigger voice. And so, yeah, it was a fun time and good experience. And we've already got authors for the second book coming on board. So, yeah.
So what was the hardest thing about putting an anthology together?
Finding the right women and the right stories. And that is hard to do because they're not talked about. So you do a lot of listening and you do a lot of watching, and when you hear things, you say, okay, well, will this fit? And will this fit? And will this fit? And we had lots that wanted to be in it, and they, we couldn't take them because the story didn't fit what we needed the stories to be about. So, yeah, not all stories make the book, that's for sure. And, but the ones that are in this book are very dynamic and explosive. And yeah.
Now, did you get people that, when you asked them, they said like, not a chance, it's going to be in a book?
Yep. We've had that. I've probably had more from women who lost grandchildren that said, there's no way in hell, and I'm not writing that, and I can't, and they're crying and they're doing it. And I get that. But, for me, it was different. I wanted to honor that she lived. Mm-hmm. Even though it was 7 days, I wanted her to be remembered, not just by me and the families, because one day I'm not going to be here, unfortunately. So I wanted her to be remembered further on. So in 20 years from now, somebody's going to pick up Sacred Hearts Rising and they're going to read the story about her.
Yeah.
50 years from now, somebody's going to read a story about her.
Now, what was it like to write your story?
To write my story was emotional in the way that I had to transport myself back to 16 years ago and to relive all of the emotions and to watch my daughter suffer the most horrific pain in a woman's life, and me as her mother not being able to help her as a mother couldn't help her own daughter. It was absolutely terrifying and also invigorating in the fact that I can either choose to dwell on her death and carry her death with me as a sad thing, or I can choose to celebrate her life. And I chose to celebrate her life.
What was the first thing your daughter said to you when you told her you're doing this?
I did ask her. I said to her, is it okay if I write a story about Jaden? And she looked at me and she said, yeah. And then I asked her, I said, would you write your story about Jaden? And it took her a while. It honestly took her a little bit longer to think about, did she want to do that? But in the end, she did. And they're two very, very different stories. One from a grandmother and one from a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I was quite surprised when I read her story, because I could see her pain, but I couldn't feel her pain. I could feel mine, but I couldn't feel hers. So, yeah, it was...
Oh, that's kind of beautiful, actually. It's going to be really interesting to see The different, because it's very different. I just had two talkers at one of my women talking. It was a mother-daughter, and the daughter was in a severe car accident and in the hospital for a year. And they both shared, they both shared their stories from their perspective. And it's very interesting to see the dynamics.
Yeah, it is. It was, very interesting is a good word.
Did it change your relationship with her?
I think it changed her relationship with the grief that she had held in her heart. And I think when she read my story and, her story, they're very different, but it had a lot of healing because she's seen Jaden through somebody else's eyes, and through somebody else's eyes who loved her, as much as she loved her own daughter, because I loved my daughter and then I loved my granddaughter. So it was interesting for her to see it in that aspect of how somebody else went through it. So, yeah.
And what are sort of the comments that the co-authors have said to you from being in the book?
Oh, they've, a lot of them have said they were quite surprised at how much it was going to change their life. They thought, I could write the story and it wasn't going to change it. Every author has had some change that came about in a positive way from sharing their story, whether it was, I'm finally able to move forward in my life, to you've given me my life back. That's a pretty strong statement that you've given somebody their life back.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I was through all of this, but I realized I wasn't. And it was great to be able to get the last pieces out. And yeah, every author has had such a profound and positive experience from writing it and getting it out and sharing it.
Yeah, well, I know personally my story in the book is about being gay and coming out. And I call it coming out again and again. And it was funny because, when you asked me and I thought, well, it's kind of boring. Like there's not that much. And then I sat down and wrote it. And I'm like, wow, because it's your story. And, sometimes there's little pieces all like through the years. But when you sit down and you piece the whole puzzle together and you see the full picture, it's very eye-opening. For me, it really was.
It's mind-blowing, actually, because you have, like I always call it like pieces of shrapnel. You have all of these pieces of shrapnel of traumatic things or events that have happened in your life. And when you start pulling all of that pieces together, that shrapnel, like you said, a puzzle, and you build something that's concrete, it is powerful.
You get when you get the full picture put together, it's like, wow, that was crazy once you see, and people usually don't do that going through life. We just, this happened and this happened. We just move on, right? But to pause and take a good look at it, it's very healing.
Yeah. And our developmental editor that we worked with, I had worked with her on my book. So I knew her format and how she worked, and having all of the stories, having the consistent editing from the one person, and made the stories even more impactful because they weren't flying off and going into different directions. They're all running down the same track, and they're all unique and they're all different, and they all have the same point of view that you can get through this. Like it's very empowering.
Well, I can't wait. So again, tell me about the book, when it's coming out, when I can buy it, and all that good stuff.
So the book is going to be launched on March the 7th, and we're going to do it online. So we will be posting links on Facebook. I'll be sending you a link to do that. And the link will only be available on March the 7th. So don't go on the 6th and don't go on the 5th because it's not going to be available. It'll be probably for $1. We want to get it out there so that the world can share in this story. So March the 7th, and
that's the digital format.
The digital format. For $1. The regular book is $20. You'll be able to buy Kindle. You'll be able to buy the regular book if you want. Everything will be there. So it's going to be fun. We'll have interviews.
And you're having a bit of a party, a big launch party, aren't you?
Yeah, on April the 21st, All of the authors are coming, and that's from across Canada and some in the US. They're all coming to Stony Plain, Alberta, to the Best Western Inn and Suites. We have the ballroom. So yeah, they're going to be there. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have singer-songwriters. We're going to have some entertainment. We're having a social in the evening with all of the authors and anybody who wants to stick around, and a dance. And yeah, it's going to be one heck of an event. Like, we got
and everybody's welcome to that launch party, aren't they?
Everybody is welcome. The tickets are available right now at early bird pricing at sacredheartsrising.com.
Okay.
So
I'll also put a link here on my page below so people can just click and get them.
They can click on that. The early bird pricing is until March the 1st, and then it changes. So $59 gets them the afternoon and the evening event. The morning is a lot for the authors, but if somebody comes in the morning, it's not that big of a deal. Like, you can still come. But yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. The authors are all going to be blown away from the morning event. And it's all secret because none of them really know what's going to happen.
we don't have a clue. We haven't heard a thing.
You don't have a clue. And yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And then, like I say, the afternoon is we have a lot of speakers coming in and sharing their wisdom and their inspiration. And we have vendors and silent auction items that will be donated, the proceeds to some of the charities that are coming on board. So yeah.
That's going to be wonderful. So Sacred Hearts Rising.
Yes.
Look for the book on March 7th, digital copy, and then get your hard copy from me, from Brenda. They'll be everywhere. Well, good luck. I think that it was a fantastic project, and I'm very proud to be part of it.
Well, thank you. And I'm very proud that you finally decided to share your story, because your story is unique in the fact that even today, there's lots of women out there that are not coming out of the closet, that are stuck in endless marriages, that are battling with their inner demons about being gay. And you sharing your story is going to give a lot of hope and a lot of pride in a lot of women to say, you know what, if Bridget can do it, I can do it. So
wonderful.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing that story.
It was a true honor. Yeah. Thank you, and good luck with everything.
Well, thank you very much, and we will be talking soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do you have a story you're burning to share with our audience? Go to womentalk.ca today and apply to be on our podcast.